Hey guys, Riley here back with another podcast, and today I'll be going over a little ball advanced rating overview video in which I will kind of show you guys exactly how ball advanced rating has been rating everything so far. And I think I did one of these, it would have been 2 weeks ago now. But I figured it'd be a good time to do another one, just to kind of give you guys some more reference points of how to, make some plays going forward, especially plays like anytime goal scorer, stuff like that, or even just going over how specific players are affecting specific teams and how important kind of these players are. And eventually, I think this will be one of those upgrades that I'll make in the winter. So later this year, but I'll be replacing the SofaScore ratings with a ball advancement rating, and that's kind of when I will be kind of making the next big upgrade on the model, which we can kind of call like I guess would be like the winter upgrade for the model, because I was kind of planning on or intending on doing something like that, where I'd kind of make some big changes, not just the week by week ones, which I've been doing so far. And speaking of week by week changes, I have made a decent amount of tweaks for this weekend coming up. I have adjusted the ratings for the weights for expected goals, ball advancement rating, the player ratings as well. Pretty much everything that's going in the final ratings I've tweaked a little bit, and I'm kind of happy. I'm pretty happy with the output. How it's looking so far. I will have the official plays out Thursday, obviously. I think tonight or tomorrow I'll be spending lots of time putting in updating the play ratings, stuff like that, because SofaScore is kind of weird, where some of them, well, it's like they don't really keep historical data for players. So for example, players like Seamus Coleman, who was injured for a majority of last season, didn't have any ratings in there. So I'm going to be going through and updating those this week as well. So hopefully this weekend we'll have the most accurate updated version of the model so far. So looking forward to that. But of course, first we're going to be looking at just general cumulative ball advancement rating for each player. And of course, right now we're looking at Arsenal. And by the way, I think I'm going to just post the video format today. Normally I'm just posting audio, but I think I'm going to post this video so you guys will actually be. I'm sure. Yeah, you guys will actually be looking at this rather than just listening. But yeah, so as you can see here with Arsenal, Granit Xhaka is currently leading all players in ball advancement rating so far. So what you tend to see with these ratings is that players in deeper positions often have an easier time or more opportunities to advance the ball further and add more value than players who are in more advanced positions. For example, players like Aubameyang and Lacazette, who you might expect to be a little higher, especially Lacazette. They're often playing with their back to goal, or they're often when they're picking up the ball, or they're under a lot of pressure, and it's hard for them to either create chances or basically make ball advancements, where you have players like Xhaka, who's consistently picking up the ball with the goal in front of him, and generally a decent amount of time as well, unless teams are pressing him. But even then, he still has a lot more opportunities to advance the ball, and that's where and the point here is not that obviously Monreal and Bellerin aren't as good as I guess you could argue aren't as good as Lacazette or Aubameyang, but we're not looking for how maybe talented a player is. Theoretically, we're looking at how the player affects the position of the ball. So, for example, players like Monreal are having a more effect on the ball position than players like Lacazette so far. And so we'll have to see how that progresses, because, of course, this is the first year that or the first season that I've done this for, so we'll have to keep looking at that, but I think that's something really interesting, and I think that's kind of something I expected as well, because players like Jose Holebas for Watford, Kieran Trippier for Tottenham, all those players are benefiting from picking up the balls in good positions in which they can then advance the ball or make very large advancements, compared to players like Lacazette or generally forwards are going to have a tougher time at making ball advancement ratings than players playing a little deeper. So theoretically, Ozil should probably be leading this team, and I think a few seasons ago would have been probably 2-3 years ago now, probably 2 years ago would have been his last season, where he had a really, really solid season. And even last year he was good, but especially like 13-14-15, I believe it was. Somewhere in there, he had an amazing season with a ton of assists. That's where he would be really showing the difference he can make compared to like strikers, for example. Because we're looking at yeah, overall, which players and which positions are having the most effect on the ball. So now that's Arsenal. I know a lot of you guys are Tottenham fans apparently, so we'll definitely go over them in a second as well. Probably just do a quick little overview of each team. So we have Bournemouth here, and the scale, by the way, this -1 to +6, that is based on all of the players. So all of the players will fit within that one scale. So for example, you're seeing Ryan Fraser here having by far the biggest effect, and actually nearly, actually yes, more than 2 times the effect on the ball compared to the second best, which is actually Steve Cook, who is a center back. And then you have Adam Smith, Charlie Daniels, Diego Rico. So yeah, with Bournemouth, you're seeing Ryan Fraser, and this is exactly the reason why we had that problem last week with Ryan Fraser, where I was like, yeah, if he's not playing, then we're going to see they're going to miss him a substantial amount. And so that was kind of the reason why I had, deviated from that original play. But he ended up playing, obviously, but still, it's just good to see that, or kind of good to show you exactly how I'm basing these things off of. But yeah, so we have Callum Wilson up there, Diego Rico, Charlie Daniels, Adam Smith, who those 3 are all fullbacks as well. So we're going to see fullbacks. Often teams with attacking fullbacks, like I had said before, Holebas, Trippier, Monreal, teams or players like that are going to be getting a lot of opportunities to advance the ball. And yeah, so they can really separate themselves from everyone else. Of course, playmakers as well, like Özil, for example, will be other ones. And you'll see here with Brighton, we have Anthony Knockaert, Pascal Gross is up there as well, and then Matty Ryan, who's had a very solid season goalkeeping so far, making a ton of saves, which isn't a good thing for Brighton overall because obviously we want to prevent that. But good for him. Good to see there. So yeah, Knockaert is the leader for Brighton. Then moving forward, we have Burnley. Now, Burnley is a bit of an interesting one because they have had a pretty awful start, but there's 2 players that really stand out for me here, and that is Joe Hart and what's his first name? Goodmanson. I think is it Johan Goodmanson? I feel like it's not worth checking up. Goodmanson for Burnley. I don't know why I can't remember his name, but yeah, he's also been having a solid season as well as Ashley Westwood, James Tarkowski, center back as well. So, but Joe Hart has had a pretty well. So for me, goalkeepers, you can look at them in one of 2 ways. One way, obviously, is he's making a ton of decent saves, adding a lot of value. And actually preventing a lot of value from being added. So the reason why goalkeepers are being rated highly by this at all, because you wouldn't think that. You wouldn't think like, oh yeah, with saves, that's not advancing the ball. But in reality, what we're looking at is the goalkeeper preventing ball advancement rating, or the ball being advanced by the other team, and that's what's adding value to Burnley. So rather than, for example, a shot, let's just say a penalty. So rather than that value from the penalty being added as the ball goes into the goal, it's being prevented from being added, and I guess in theory adding value to the ball for Burnley. So that's exactly why he's rated so highly. He's been doing pretty well. So then we're looking at Cardiff now. Joe Rawls, he's been a player that's been pretty impressive. Neil Etheridge has been another keeper that has been rated pretty highly so far this season. You have Junior Hoilett, Joe Bennett, Callum Patterson, but nothing too much besides Joe Rawls and Neil Etheridge, who is another one of those keepers. Now, Eden Hazard is actually the league leader right now in ball advancement rating, and that's cumulative, of course. Pretty soon we'll start focusing in on per 90, but it's still a little early to get an accurate sample. Only 6 games in. But yeah, right now we have Eden Hazard, the league leader, at 5.528 ball advancement rating, 5.5. And so yeah, he's averaging about almost 1 +1 ball advancement rating per game, and considering he was also making sub appearances early, his per 90 would also be a lot higher than this. So very, very impressive so far. I kind of expected that because what has generally tended to happen under Maurizio Sarri with players like Dries Mertens, you have players like Jose Callejon and Insigne as well, Roberto Insigne. The front 3 has flourished, especially at Napoli under Sarri. So now that Sarri has a world-class winger for the first time with Eden Hazard, he is really going to thrive in this system because it really is meant for players like Hazard. He'll get on the ball a ton, but he's also getting on the ball in great areas. So that's the difference between, for example, Alexis Sanchez, who's often picking up the ball in very, very deep areas, and it's almost creating an imbalance, and it's making it very hard for him to be effective on the ball when he's having to work so hard to come pick it up deep. And then when he gets the ball deep, he's now in an ineffective position, and the team is now effectively imbalanced. Anyways, so yeah, Marcos Alonso is playing very well. Jorginho actually was one of the standouts from last weekend. He's been playing very well so far. Kovacic has started off very nicely. Azpilicueta as well in there. And then moving on from Chelsea, I'll try to go through this a little quicker, but I kind of do like to talk about every player, especially if you guys don't really, I know some of you guys don't really follow the Premier League at all, so this may mean nothing to you. But for those who do, I think it's kind of nice to give a little context on each player, at least each player that's going to be impacting the game, because those are the players we want to focus in on. So we have Crystal Palace now, another one of those teams with a highly impactful keeper, that being Wayne Hennessy. Has made a ton of saves so far this season, has been pretty important for them. And you have Wilfried Zaha, Andres Townsend as well. And Aaron Wan-Bissaka, he is an up-and-coming right back for Crystal Palace, who he looks very, very well. He's completing a lot of dribbles, completing lots of take-ons, and so he's going to be a very solid attacking fullback. Unfortunately for him, when it comes to when you're looking into the future for like an England squad, for example, you already have Trent Alexander-Arnold. So I mean, it's going to be tough for him to beat him out for a spot for an England's team, for example. But that's obviously looking very far for the future. But yeah, Aaron Wan-Bissaka definitely one to watch. Now looking on to Everton. Richarlison has started off the season very solidly, of course, and then he had the 3-game ban, so he's playing at a significant playing time disadvantage when just looking at cumulative. But Gylfi Sigurdsson has looked very, very solid so far for them, as well as Lucas Digne. He's been pretty good as well for them at left back. And it's kind of interesting here because Digne and Baines, two left backs, are actually both in the top 5, so they have some great depth there, obviously. Two great options, and if Digne continues to play well, I think this should be the season that he kind of takes over that Leighton Baines spot that he's held down for so many years now. And so good signs from Everton so far. I think they'll be fine, even though they've had a bit of a rough start. But Richarlison will be back, so they'll be good moving forward. Then we have Jean-Michel Seri, for Fulham. He's kind of been their lone standout, but now he's made a lot of saves. He's their second. And actually, Andre Schürrle has added a ton of shot value so far for Fulham this season, and we'll go over that later. But he's another one that has been pretty effective and impactful. Let's see, then moving forward from that, we have Huddersfield. Now, Huddersfield has not been very good so far. They've pretty much been toothless going forward. Offering really nothing going forward. Pretty much down there with the worst attacking teams in the league, down there with Newcastle. But Philip Billing has been a standout, as well as Aaron Moy. You'd kind of assume would be their key player, but actually Philip Billing is their highest rated so far, completing a ton of defensive actions. And I can even kind of pull up a defense as well later for you guys to see. But I don't really want this to take I don't really want this to last for like 45 minutes, because obviously I'd go over all of this then. Philip Billing, a decent player there. But Huddersfield going forward, they are certainly in a tough spot. I think I'm going to skip through now, honestly. Maybe just take a quick look at each team. Leicester, you have James Maddison, been solid for them so far. Then you have Liverpool. James Milner is actually the leader there, and he's one of the highest in the league. I believe he's in the top 10. Alexander-Arnold up there as well. Andy Robertson, another two fullback pairing. And you have Mo Salah, who will certainly increase as the season goes on. Hasn't had the greatest start, but he's still certainly very impactful for them. And then in Kevin De Bruyne's absence, we have David Silva really stepping up, which is a good sign for City. They really needed, and actually Gundogan as well was one of the standouts from last weekend. So those two players have really stepped up for City in De Bruyne's absence. And yeah, it's kind of sad to see that De Bruyne is actually last in this team right now. Of course, that will go up later, and we're not taking into account for 90. So I mean, something to be concerned about considering he's been injured. But it'll be interesting to see how he transitions back here, because Bernardo Silva has also kind of really proved himself on the side that he should be at least fighting for a starting role. And he's kind of earned a lot more time than last season already at this point. So it's good to see from him. Ben Mendy already had a great impact. Of course, he's injured now, but then you have great deputizing left back as well in Fabian Delph. So City looking really well going forward. And once De Bruyne comes back, they'll only be stronger. Now, looking at a bit of a depressing side so far, which is Manchester United. Of course, I am a United fan. Of course, I think I've already explained this in a podcast before, but over the recent years, I've kind of just gone toward just kind of watching soccer for the heck of it, just because I like it, and not so much supporting a team. But yeah, so if I had to say I supported a team, it would be Manchester United, and it's been, once again, another depressing start to a season for them. Mourinho having a tough draw last weekend against Wolverhampton. There's been a few standouts. De Gea, who has been good as usual. Then Pogba has really stepped up this season, I think, and Luke Shaw has been a surprise. Key player returning from injury, and he's been very solid. So actually, I don't think he wasn't, or last season he wasn't injured, but he has kind of, I guess, reasserted himself in the side, and he's probably going to be a consistent starter for the rest of the season unless something else comes up. And then you have Alexis Sanchez is up there, but he really should be higher. Alexis Sanchez, if you're comparing him to Hazard, Sanchez really should be up there with Hazard in impact, and he really hasn't. He's been nowhere near so far this season. Fred, though, has been pretty impressive, but otherwise this United side has been pretty dang disappointing. Moving forward, then we have Newcastle, who is probably the worst attacking side in the league, and that will be backed up here. Not a single player over 2 or +2 ball master rating, and the only pure attacking player in the top 5 for them is Matt Ritchie. Actually have Jose Perez as well, but much lower. Nothing great from them so far. Paul Dummett is the standout at left back. Now moving forward, we have Southampton. Ryan Bertrand, another left back. So like I said, you're going to be seeing a lot of fullbacks, especially attacking ones, because that has become one of the key positions over the recent seasons with the always evolving tactical styles. Fullbacks have been one of the key ways to gain overloads over teams. Overlapping, because now teams have figured out that obviously you're wasting space in players if you're having 4 defenders sitting back constantly. You've seen more of lots of complete wingbacks over the recent years, especially like Marcelo, who is specialized, Dani Alves as well, players like that, and then even to a lesser extent now. Marcos Alonso is probably another great example of that, of a complete complete wingback. You'll see more and more examples of that as the years go on, especially with players now like Alexander Arnold, who will be the future of the English team, in my opinion. So that's it from Southampton. And then you have Tottenham, who I know a lot of you guys support. I'm pretty sure. I think that's what Mark had said. I've seen some stuff in the chat as well. So Kieran Trippier is a player with just as many, I wouldn't say just as many faults as pros, but he has been very, very effective. He's a very, very effective player going forward, and he's kind of crucial to how Tottenham are going to be advancing the ball and how they have been advancing the ball. He is a bit of a defensive liability, though, and I had seen something somewhere where, a majority of the chances allowed have been coming from his side of the pitch. So, defensive liability, but he's so effective going forward, and I think he is number 3 overall in the Premier League. I'll pull that up in a second. Hugely effective player going forward, and definitely someone to continue watching this season. Of course, you have Christian Eriksen up there as well, and then Dele Alli, who's actually been pretty solid in defense this season. Let's see, I do not want that. Then we have Watford, who their main player will be Jose Halabas. There he is. I think he is now 2nd in the league overall. And then we have Roberto Pereira. They've had a pretty consistent side throughout the season. A little lackluster defensively, actually, last week against Fulham. So we'll have to see how they move forward from that. But very solid team overall. And they have a great tactical system they are built around. Then moving on to the penultimate team, which is West Ham. Lucas Fabianski, another keeper. So you're generally going to be seeing a lot of these poor teams, teams not playing as well with highly rated keepers, because keepers are going to be forced to make more saves if teams are going to be more defensively active. So, and by defensively active, I mean sitting back in defense more rather than possessing the ball and being active in attack. They also have Felipe Anderson, a new signing who has been expected. A lot of things have, I guess, basically been expected of him, especially in the wake of Dimitri Payet's departure a few seasons ago now. He's kind of expected to be that little heir to him, I guess, and he's done very well so far, so good to see there. Then moving on to the final team here with just the individual World rating, we have John Moutinho for Wolverhampton and Ruben Neves, the two center mids, playing very well. You know, Johnny, who is the left back, I believe, yes, the left back, and then Raul Jimenez as well, the striker for Wolverhampton, also playing quite well. So that's all from individual ball advancement rating and cumulative as well. So eventually we'll be going over per 90 as the season progresses. Now, what I'm going to do quickly, actually, I'm going to show you the full league quick, just for individual. And I don't want to do that. I want to do standard. Yeah, so there we go. So here is the top grouping. And the players that really stand out for me are Willian, Ryan Fraser, James Milner, David Silva, Kieran Trippier, Jose Holebas, and Eden Hazard. And so those players are going to be having the biggest effect on your team advancing the ball. Okay, so moving forward from that, though, I do kind of want to bring up shot and pass value. Now, these are two of my favorite things to look at, because what I've done and this is recent too, I hadn't always done this, but I split up ball advancement rating, so I can now identify passing and passing value, shot value, stuff like that, and that's really what we want to be focusing in on when looking at team styles, player styles. You know, which players are having the effect in different aspects of the game. And once I fit this to the width, here we go. So Eden Hazard clearly standing out as the best overall player here in terms of shot and pass. He is actually the highest rated passer in addition to being the highest rated shooter so far. Then you have Sergio Aguero up there, James Maddison as well. And so shooters are going to be rated highly based on where they're scoring and actually hitting shots on target from. So they're going to be punished for especially close misses. And when I say miss, I mean off target. On-target shots will be rated, but the closer to goal, the lower they're rated, because generally what we're assuming here is that the closer to goal, or not necessarily closer to goal, but the higher the probability of scoring a goal, the more value should be taken, or I guess the less value you will receive if you do not convert it. Now, so moving on from that, other interesting players, Ryan Fraser standing out for Bournemouth. Once again, one of those really impactful players. Granit Xhaka up there as well. Matt Doherty. That's an English name. I don't know how to pronounce that. So Matt. We'll call him Matt. Matt Doherty from Wolverhampton. I think I just butchered that, but it's all right. Right back for Wolverhampton. Low rated shooting wise so far this season. And actually, what I do need to fix though is you'll be seeing some of these weird players like Terence Kongolo, Wesley Hoyt down pretty low in the shooting, and that's because I think I had added. I think own goals are currently included in this as well. And the reason why I had done that originally is because, we're not strictly looking at, for example, we're not just taking a look at, shot accuracy, stuff like that. We really want to be looking strictly at value, and that's the main point of this, because eventually I'm going to be creating a formula, which I already have, but it's loosely, it's kind of rough right now, just a rough idea. But eventually I'll be creating a precise formula to convert ball advancement rating to goals added and goals, I guess, against, stuff like that. And which I already have that. Yeah, obviously I already have that in the model. But individually, that is the key, where we can start to look at and see, how many goals has Eden Hazard added through this specific pass, theoretically, or with the specific shot. So stuff like that is really the key to this model, and what will eventually become more present and apparent when I really start to implement that. But for right now, this is kind of what we're basing most of our stuff off of. Yeah, so that's all of this for now. I'll probably be posting some graphs on Lucid Analytics as well throughout the day. I already posted one of Arsenal's just cumulative bar, which I've been showing already. But I'll probably be posting more of the shot and pass value on Lucid Analytics, so feel free to follow and check that out as well. And yeah, let me know too if just let me know if for example, you want me to like maybe post some of these in the Slack channel if you're interested in that sort of thing. Yeah, you can just feel free to, and you guys can obviously just request a graph at any time if you guys want it. So for example, if you're unsure of a play or something like that and you want to say like, oh, I'm interested in playing maybe a Sergio Aguero to score any time, what's his shot value for this season, I will just quickly send over a graph on or even just personally send it to you if you are interested in that. So yeah, just feel free to let me know whenever you want, and I'll try to get it done and get it to you as quickly as possible. So that is it for shot and pass value. I think the last thing I'll go over today is attack versus defense, and I'd kind of gone over that for the last weekend's plays. Obviously, it didn't turn out too well, but I do really want to emphasize the importance in this right here. So these are player-based. The player-based isn't going to be too telling because generally what happens is that the keepers are adding a lot of the value to defense, and the attackers are obviously going to be, the field players are going to be adding the most value through attack. There's a few standouts, but what I really want to focus in on is actually clubs. So yeah, here if you're looking at defense, Lucas Fabianski currently rated as the highest keeper. We have Alex McCarthy, Wayne Hennessy, Neil Etheridge, Matty Ryan, Kasper Schmeichel, David De Gea up there as well, Petr Cech, Jordan Pickford, Ederson. So yeah, generally the keepers are going to be up there in defensive value, but what I really want to look at is club. So this is what I showed last week. Actually, that would be nice if I labeled it. There we go. Okay, so what I showed last week. I'll actually fix the upper and lower bounds quick. Here we go. 6. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so this is how it looks for. Yeah, like I had kind of gone over the last, would have been last official plays podcast, the attacking and defensive activity. So now this is the little updated version of that, I guess. I haven't added any average lines, so it's kind of hard to differentiate between like, oh yeah, what's an average attack, what's a non-average attack. Here, let's do that quick actually. There we go. Average line for that. And that. Okay, there we go. So there are the average lines. So this is, once again, this is going to be looking at which teams are more active in attack and which teams are more active in defense. And one of the few teams I can already see has changed is this Tottenham team, who was actually originally in this active defense and active attack quadrant, has now moved out of the active defense quadrant and back into the non-active, or I guess below average in terms of defensive activity. So we've kind of already gone over this. I'll just kind of just go over each team, or not each team, but just the standouts. So Crystal Palace, West Ham, Burnley, those three teams, especially Watford even, which now that I think about it, it's kind of a mistake for Watford because going forward, a team like Watford who's been very highly defensive active, which can be good and bad. It really depends on how, I guess, the balance between attack and defense. But for Watford, they've done it fairly decently where they're above average in attack as well. But yeah, against a team like Fulham, who we already know is a solid attacking side, and making plays like that, we really don't want to start to, for me especially, want to start identifying trends and like ways we can kind of beat the market through stuff like this. And once we do that, we'll start making tons of more accurate plays and plays that we can be more confident in. So yeah, City and Chelsea pretty much the highest rated teams based off of this. Then you have Arsenal, Bournemouth up there as well still, despite that pretty bad loss versus Burnley. So that'll start, if they continue on this bad little streak of theirs, they will continue to regress to the mean. Then you have United, who isn't very active in either aspect. Same for Wolverhampton, Leicester, Huddersfield, Cardiff. Those teams are generally going to be weaker sides, and hopefully Wolverhampton gets more and more attacking attacking activity. Hopefully that increases as the season goes on for them. And I think honestly, the more Adama Traore plays, the better they are going to be in attack. But yeah, so I think that's all for this podcast here. Obviously just kind of wanted to give a little overview if you guys kind of enjoyed it. If you want me to keep doing these, I will probably do these, like I said yesterday, maybe I'll start doing it like once a month. I think I said like once every 2 weeks, but I think that's a little too often, so maybe once a month. Just to kind of give you guys a little update on each team like this. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I will see you on Thursday for the official plays.